Coming to you live.
Hi, welcome to I've Never Met a Woman Architect Before with Michele Grace Hottel Architect. That's me. Today, my guest is Jeff Echols. Today's episode is brought to you by Opus 2 MBE LLC, offering consulting services that include peer reviews of construction documents, technical specification writing, mentorship for architects, especially those in small firms, translation and proofreading services in English and Spanish. That is owned by Christian Nielsen Palacios, and he is active online under the moniker The Grouchy Architect, where he shares insights on architectural practice, quality control, and professional development. Thank you to Opus 2 MBE LLC.
He's not really that grouchy. He likes to pretend
really
that he's grouchy, but he's not really that grouchy.
He just plays one. He's not a real grouch. He just plays one.
He plays a grouchy architect on TV.
Yes. He's taking over the grouch's position because we don't have the grouch on TV anymore. Today, my guest is Jeff Echols, who I've known for probably 10 years now or something. Has it been 10? Maybe 12.
It's probably more than that. Yes, it's a long time.
We used to blog together with Stag Architects, and then he did a great thing during the pandemic about context and clarity. He built the Build Your Brand podcast. What else? EchoEngagement.
Yeah, EchoEngagement
for architects.
Yeah. EchoEngagement is my company, and
okay.
Out of that, I've done a lot of these things that you're talking about. Of course, the Build Your Brand podcast and the Build Your Brand course and the Build Your Brand workshop, Context and Clarity Live, which is still, you can still find Build Your Brand and Context and Clarity on where wherever you consume podcasts or even YouTube.
Yeah.
And today, and a lot of this is in partnership with Mark Arlepage, the founder of Entree Architect. We did Context and Clarity for 3 years, and now we're just past 3 years on doing a show, another daily show called Java with Jeff. It wasn't originally called that.
Uh-huh.
I don't generally, I would never name it that, but it was originally something like our morning mindset reset or something like that. So every morning we get together to talk about some aspect of the mindsets that are necessary for growth. And within about a week, one of the audience members renamed it Java with Jeff, and it's stuck. So it's Java with Jeff.
Yeah. So as the AEC industry increases its adoption of AI, Jeff Echols reminds leaders that technology fails without the right culture. Jeff acts as a strategic partner to firms, helping them move beyond the buzzwords to build a true culture of growth. He helps leaders realize that being future ready isn't about software. It's about the simultaneous elevation of your people, your organization, and your customers.
How about that?
Yes. If you want to navigate disruption, if you want to navigate disruption without being the human connection that drives your success, without losing the human connection that drives your success, Jeff is the voice you need to hear. Yes, he is. Yeah.
I appreciate that. It is, years ago, I used to go out to Colorado a lot to go mountain biking, and I was in the terminal at Denver, getting ready to fly back here to Indianapolis, and it's been basically playing in the desert for 4 years, or not 4 years, for 4 days, and probably a little gruff, a little gravelly. And I was up at the counter, and this other passenger was standing next to me, and he heard me talking to the agent, and he said, "I just have to tell you, your voice is a gold mine." And I still haven't found the gold. But I appreciate the encouragement about the voice.
You need an agent.
I do need an agent. So I also do public address announcing for sports, and
Yeah, yeah.
I know the Miami Heat are looking for a new public address announcer. So if you're out
Oh,
there, Miami fans, you
um,
can write in vote if you want.
it does. I'm going to be in Orlando to do the podcast that you've kind of like, that I've kind of been working with you on.
Mhm.
And with Lorinda Spear of Architectonica and Cecilia Ramos of Lutron Electronics. But it seems like when I ask people that are in Miami, they know nothing about Orlando, where we're like here, if we're in San Diego, like people know people in LA or in vice versa. But
Two different
otherwise, I'd be
worlds.
putting in a good word for you down there.
Well, the Orlando have the magic. I don't know. Maybe they're looking for somebody.
um, so what are your first recollections of experiencing architecture?
You know, it it's funny you ask that because I just so as we're recording this, we're in the first full week of January,
Mm.
and Ball State started back to classes this week, which means that I started teaching my graduate students again, pro practice for the graduate students, and we do a pakachka at the beginning of the semester to get to know each other, and I give them the example using doing my own pakachka. So it's it's kind of in line with your questions.
Uh,
Growing up, so I just had to do this. I just had to do this on Tuesday, I guess was the point of that tangent. But growing up, both of my parents were from basically farm families down in Georgia. One more of a commercial and one absolutely sustenance farmers. But when I went to my grandparents or any of the home places, basically it was the old barns, and some of them a century old. And my dad's parents lived in one of the oldest farmhouses. When I was growing up, they were living in one of the oldest farmhouses in the county, where he was from. And so early on, it was agrarian architecture, climbing around in barns and seeing the structures of barns and things like that. And I was always fascinated by those buildings. I still think I live in Indiana now, and it's no different. It's just a little colder, but a lot flatter. But that was an early thing, an early exposure to wondering about buildings. And then my dad was transferred from Atlanta to Chicago, where I lived for 20 some odd years up there. And my mom, being a lifelong learner, still is. She would, we'd go to the Museum of Science and Industry, we'd go to all the museums, and she also found out that there was this guy named Frank Lloyd Wright that had designed a lot of houses and whatnot. And so as a kid, between the time that I was almost 8 when we moved, so between 8 and the end of high school, I've probably been through every Frank Lloyd Wright project that's been open to the public, and certainly done, the Wright tour. Have it guided or get the. When I was a
yeah.
kid, it was cassette tapes. Walk around and the voice would tell you about all the different houses. But it was that immersion too. It's like, oh, Frank Lloyd Wright. I mean, this is interesting. These are actually designed houses, right? For clients, and it started to establish this idea of architecture. And so those were my early exposures, and that's what turned me on after
Mhm.
graduating and working in Chicago for a while. I used to walk past Unity Temple twice a day. So still have an affinity for Frank,
Uh-huh.
and obviously expanded some taste beyond there. But those were the early years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, those are great. I mean, I have not been to Chicago until a few years ago when we had the AI CRAN symposium there.
Mm,
And
yeah,
before
yeah.
that I had not, I never people are like, "What? You've never been to Chicago?" I said, "No, I've never been to Chicago." And then I drove out to see the Farnsworth House after the
Mhm.
symposium, and then the rain was so bad on the way out there. I mean, it cleared up like maybe 5 miles in, and then I like went to the Farnsworth house and then I left and headed back to Chicago because I'm like, well, it's clear. I'm going to get back there. And then I was able to see a lot of the Frank Lloyd rides that I wasn't able to, that weren't right by the hotel. And we did see the Roby house on one of the,
Sure. Yeah.
on the house tour for Cran. We saw the Roby house, and then I got there too late for the Frank Lloyd Wright home and studio to like go to it. But I saw the exterior and a little bit of the interiors that I could peer into and everything. But
the ginkgo tree.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Okay, which kind of parlays into what 3 classic buildings do you like and why? I remember one of them was the tower because you had a photo of the glass kind of balcony space that they have in the tower in downtown Chicago.
In the Sears Tower?
Yeah.
For all of you out there that are saying, no, it's the Willis Tower. No, you're wrong. Sorry. Sears Tower. I'll die on that hill. Yeah. It's part of being spoiled by spending a lot of my growing up years in that area. Chicago, I don't know. Ginny Gang is still doing some really interesting work there, but
yeah.
The early heyday of skyscrapers, of course, a lot of it was happening in Chicago. So being surrounded by a lot of great architecture in that city was really beneficial for me growing up. I worked on the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art in my first job. It's kind of crazy. It's first a year or two out of school or something like that. Somebody handed me literally a napkin sketch with a concept for a stair, and they said, figure this out. And if you go to the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art, as it turns out, that's the most photographed, and I'm not taking credit for the design of any of this stuff, but I do call that my stair, right? That was my part of that project, and it's the most photographed feature of that museum. And so that's a lot of fun. Some of my favorite buildings, I've always been a huge fan of Calatrava. And there's an interesting, I don't have it here in this room, but I still have the first study model for my thesis project. And this is pre-Calatrava coming on the scene, but I think somebody could look at that model and go, oh, that looks like Calatrava. And it's before he really hit the scene, but that skeletal, the spatial quality underneath the skeleton, I really love that. The Oculus in New York is an amazing space down there at Ground Zero, or the close to Chicago, the museum up in Milwaukee is amazing as well. But lately, for whatever reason, and maybe there's sort of a tie to Calatrava because it's a lot of those structures that he creates, a lot of their train stations and their museums and there are these things, but they're very cathedral-like. And I've been, I think partially by happenstance, I've been to New York quite a bit the last couple of years to do work with firms. I've been to California several times the last handful of years for conferences and to do work with firms, and South Bend, the metropolis of South Bend, Notre Dame, also. And somehow I've gotten on this kick of visiting cathedrals. New York, San Francisco, Notre Dame, other places. And there's something really powerful, obviously, about cathedrals, but it really makes me think about the spaces that we design. I don't design anything anymore in terms of built things, but it really makes me think about the power that we have to create spaces and to create powerful spaces. And these cathedrals, okay, they're worship spaces, Calatrava, those are not worship spaces per se, although the Oculus strikes me as, maybe the worship of capitalism. But we've also, there's a project here in Indianapolis where I live. It's the World War Memorial. It was designed and built after the First World War, assuming that that was going to be the only one. And now,
Yes, of course.
who
Yeah.
knows? but
Yeah.
but there is a what do they call? There's a shrine. They call it a shrine at the top of that. And you're right after I moved here to Indianapolis, I had been doing some preservation work. And the firm that I worked for a relatively short period of time, right after I moved here, we got the World War Memorial. We got the renovation project, the contract to do the renovation of it. And so I got to spend a lot of time in there. And that shrine, when I walked in there, is just one of the most powerful and moving spaces. And it's the power of the space. It's not the stuff that's in it. I know the reason for it, right?
Yeah.
It's people
Yeah.
that have fallen in battle and things like that. Sure. There's that piece of it. And I understand going into a cathedral, right? There's the in most of these, well, all of these cathedrals that I'm referencing, they're, it's a some version of Christianity. But so
Yeah.
I get that piece of it, but there's more, right? There's more
Mhm.
to the power of the spaces. And that's really, as an observer today, not really a designer in those aspects anymore. That's something that I'm really enjoying is where
Yeah.
can I go? And anytime I travel, I'm okay. What do I need to go see? What do I need to go explore? And if I can find something, yeah, sure. There's beautiful pieces of architecture. They're artistic. Maybe it's Gary, maybe it's Zaha, maybe it's whoever. Um, but what's the space that it creates?
Yeah. And
And
the
that's
emotion that it's evoking.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. How's
Yeah.
that for a non-answer?
So then what do you like about being in the field of architecture? Though it's not being a traditional architect, but you're still
Right.
in the field of architecture,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. I've tried to leave a few times and I can't get away. I still do very much believe that we are the ones, this field, the people in this field, the work in this field are the ones that shape society. I mean, whether you're an architect or a civil engineer or whatever it is that you do in the AEC industry, if we want to expand it
Yeah,
that
yeah. And
far.
I mean, I would say that like anybody that went to architecture school, I mean, technically they're not architects, but it's like
Right, right.
I mean, because you're not licensed, but that doesn't mean that you're not, I don't know, you're still you're definitely more like an architect than like people that are like the architect of war, the architect of, peace, like, right. It's like,
Sure.
I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
I think we're still architects.
Yeah, yeah. And I like to look at it and I like I said, I believe, right, that this industry, the AEC, people have given me grief for calling architecture an industry. Well, it's a practice, it's a profession.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. If you really want to get into semantics. So let's talk about AEC industry then.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we think about the industry as a whole, it shapes the way that we live, the way that we work, the way that we play, the way that we learn, the way that we worship, all of the things.
Hmm.
And besides it having a huge impact on the global economy, I really think that it has this huge impact on humanity. And again, if we go back to spaces that we create and the power and the emotion and everything else, certainly. So that's why I really enjoy still being in the profession, so to speak, still teaching in the profession, still consulting with firms in the profession. I think there have been for a long time, and I still think there are a lot of opportunities for us to improve the way that we work.
Mhm.
Maybe it's literally the way that we work our operations, but the way that we build businesses and the way that we serve clients and the way that we bring up the future of the profession, et cetera. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities here for us to make those changes, and that's where I work today, right? It's in that part of the profession.
Mhm. Mhm. And on that note, what would you like to say about the future of architecture? And then we can kind of talk about this kind of new series within a series that I have in my podcast, and about the practice of architecture. I mean, I know we have the practice of architecture, but um, that's another podcast. But there there is kind of this way about like how do we develop our firms, how do we develop the business part, how do we work with clients, and kind of those other aspects of the profession.
Yeah, I think, well, like I just said, there's a lot of opportunity. I've been running mastermind groups for leaders of innovation in the AEC world, so architecture, engineering, and construction. I've been running startup incubators, all focused on the built environment. So maybe it's a software, maybe it's robotics, maybe it's automation, whatever it is. It's all focused on the built environment, like I said, the way that we work, the way that we build, et cetera. And I think we've had these types of conversations before, right? We're at this precipice in change and advancement and everything else. And of course, you can't go more than about 13 seconds without somebody mentioning AI. And of course, AI is pushing, it's creating opportunities, it's creating disruption. Remember, it's a tool, right? Remember when BIM
Yeah.
came out? Remember when
Yeah.
CAD came out? You and I
Yeah.
go back and we can remember linen before vellum, right? So, um,
Yes.
rapidographs, et cetera. But
On
um,
Mylar. On Mylar.
exactly. Electric erasers. Google it
I
if you don't
love
know.
electric array. I wish I could find one that was still working today as well.
There's got to be some around.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that struck me a couple of years ago as I was running these mastermind groups, as I was starting up these mastermind groups for the innovation leaders, there's all this conversation about generative AI and large language model AI, and what can architects do with this, and how is this a threat to architecture, et cetera, and engineers and others. And one of the things that kept coming up was, hey, we've got this technology, we're making this investment in this technology, we're doing these things to try to stay ahead because we see Cove Tool changing to Cove and calling themselves an AI architecture firm and all of these things changing. And I would hear these leaders saying, the technology is great, but if we don't use it, if we don't adapt it or adopt it, then what's it doing for us? And I'd see these leaders who were, in some of the larger firms are making multi-million dollar investments in these technologies and going, hey, we're struggling because we've got a 4% or a 7% adoption rate. Think, get a piece of paper out or a calculator, whatever, and think about that for a minute, right? They just dropped
Yeah.
$10 million on Copilot or whatever it is. And they're saying out loud that only 4% of the people are actually using it.
Mhm.
And that's not only an operational issue, right? And it's a training issue. There's a lot that goes into
Yeah.
that. But what they're saying is we don't have a culture of growth. We don't have a growth mindset throughout our organization. Aha, that's an aha moment. I host this show. I've been hosting this show for 3 years now, where we talk about growth mindsets, where we talk about the things that are necessary individually, in relationships and businesses, on the mindsets that are necessary for us to grow and keep moving forward. And
Mhm.
so I've been working with clients and on the idea of a culture of growth. And I'm actually tinkering with writing a book
Mm-hmm.
about, it's probably, working title, A Culture of Growth.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a title similar to that out there, but basically focusing on, okay, if you are an architect or an architecture firm or an engineering firm, remember the term triple bottom line that used to be popular around the sustainability culture, and it's there are still some people that use it. It was that people planet and profit, right? The triple
Oh,
bottom
okay.
line. You had to focus on more than just profit. It was three-pronged, right? If you're just focused on profit, you're ignoring the planet, you're ignoring the people, and so on and so forth. Well, culture of growth is similar, right? It's a focus on your people, growth of your people, because if your people aren't growing, your firm's not going to grow. Focus on the growth of your clients, because if you're not helping your clients grow, then that's going to come back, right? And it's not going to help you
Mm-hmm.
grow. And then focus on the growth of your organization. And that's what I'm doing now is how do we, if we're all honest about it, how do we catch up with what's going on out there? And
Mm-hmm.
then how do we start creating a competitive advantage for our firm, for our organization, in terms of fostering and developing a growth mindset. It is for the benefit of our people, our employees. We've got a labor problem, right? We've got a talent problem in the profession. How does how do we help our clients to grow? Because if they're not growing, they're not going to hire us, right? If they're not growing, they don't have the money to hire us. So how do we help them grow?
Yeah.
And then how do we do this as an organization? Because we're all relying on that growth in this capitalist market.
And then, I mean, like when we're talking about growth, because I don't know whether, it's like I don't know whether we're all like thinking of what the definition of growth
Right,
means,
right.
but
It's a broad
yeah,
broad
yeah,
term, right? Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It. I used to work with some. I've done a couple of stints in venture capital, and there's somebody that I used to work with that looked at design firms basically, and they're like, why do they not want to get bigger? Right? It was and so their definition of growth was basically numbers. It was
Yes, yeah,
personnel, right? It's
yeah,
employee numbers.
yeah,
And okay, maybe, right? But if you really love being a sole practitioner, right? If you don't want to hire a drafts person, if you don't want to
mhm,
hire, in-house accounting or whatever it is, right? If you don't
mhm,
want to hire a project manager, right? If you want to basically have a lifestyle type business, which a lot of small businesses are, even outside of architecture, then you're probably going, yeah, I don't want to grow in numbers. I don't want to grow in people, but then what does growth mean? Is it
mhm.
revenue? It needs to be, right? Because
Yeah,
despite what any talking head behind the podium is saying, things are not getting cheaper,
yeah,
right? It's houses aren't, cars aren't, you know, groceries aren't.
yeah.
I hate
And
to
salaries
burst
aren't,
anybody's
they haven't
right,
kept up. Right.
right,
Salaries have not kept up with the
yeah,
cost of living.
yeah. So it's necessary for us to grow in terms of revenue, um, and we can get into things like how do we use technology? Do we use that for efficiency? Hey, that might help us be more profitable, quote
Mhm.
unquote. But we really need to start thinking about growth holistically in terms of the way I see it on Java with Jeff. Let me
Mhm.
go half a step backwards. On Java with Jeff, I always say there's three lenses of growth when we're talking about a person. And it sort of relates to the culture of growth as well. But
Yeah.
there's personal growth and there's relationship growth. And usually I'll call it professional growth. So if you're a business owner, it's your business. Maybe if you're an employee, maybe it's your job, whatever it is, right? So personal and relationship and professional. And I use those three lenses because that pretty much makes up the holistic person, right? That makes up our experience as a human being. It's us, it's whoever we have relationships with, and that might be a significant other, but it might be a sibling or a parent or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
there's all kinds of
Yeah.
relationships that we have, and then of course our profession is generally what most of us do during the day and sometimes into the night. But if we're focused on those three lenses, growing in those three areas, then the rising tide raises all ships, right? But it starts with personal growth. You can't grow in a relationship if you aren't growing yourself, right? It's not the relationship's responsibility to help you grow. It's not the other person, whoever they are, right? We have to grow as an individual and take that into a relationship if we want relationships to grow. And same with our businesses, right? You can't improve, quote, or grow, quote, your business if you're not willing to do that for yourself, right? You're gonna have to learn things, maybe. You're gonna have to put yourself out there in different ways, maybe, whatever it is. Um, so growth means a lot of things, and we could go all the way back to mindfulness. I mean, that's really what a lot of Java with Jeff or my Substack that I started that I'm tinkering with, what that's about, right? It's mindfulness. It's when I go to a yoga class and the yoga instructor says, okay, you leave everything, you leave your baggage out there in the lobby, your shoes too, right? They're like the literal, but also the mental, right? And the emotional baggage.
Oh,
You leave it out there
yeah.
and you go into the studio and you have your mat there, right? And we work on we're not going to do a whole episode on yoga, but we work on some of the eight facets of yoga, and some of that is mindfulness, some of it is physical, certainly, but our ability, I think, ultimately, our ability to lean into the discomfort that is necessary for change.
Mhm.
That is probably the ultimate need, the ultimate responsibility for us to grow. And what does that mean as a business? It may mean I need to learn more about my client's business or my client's life, whoever our clients are, whatever they do, however we serve them. I need to know them better
Yeah.
so that I can say, hey, this is the way that architects have practiced for the last 93 years or whatever it is. What if there's something else? Right? What if there's something that I could do, something that my skill set allows me to do that serves my client in a new way? Something that allows my client to grow. And I've seen this in events that I've hosted over the last several years. There was an event I hosted down in Miami where we had owners, constructors, and designers on stage together having these panel discussions. Fantastic. An
Mhm.
owner would say something, well, this, that, and the other, we need this, and nobody's providing this. Right? The architects aren't, the contractors aren't, the engineers aren't. And you just sit back and go, there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for us if our skill set, if we have the ability to help that client, it helps them to grow.
Mhm.
Now we've got something new that helps us to grow. If we're getting paid for that, right, it helps us to grow in that way, but it also may give the opportunity for our people to expand what they do, right? To find some new passion or find some new proficiency. And so if we start thinking in that way, then we're helping our clients, we're helping our organization, we're helping our people. And so, I think the definition of growth is very, very broad. And I don't like the idea of trying to tie it to people. I mean, if you want to think, in terms of quarterly quarterly reports or something like that, what do firms need to be, how do firms need to be growing? Well, they need to be growing in profit, right? I mean, that's ultimately in margin. That's ultimately what is a lot of people's view of of business growth. But then that ignores the triple bottom line, right? If we're just focused on that, so I don't like that singular focus on anything.
Hmm.
I think there is room for you to be a sole practitioner and grow through a number of different avenues. And
Yeah.
and that's kind of the
Yeah.
trick. How do we develop that culture? How are we always looking for ways to grow?
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about before, like on in context and clarity or other places where even if you are a sole proprietor, it's like, how do you want the firm to be? Do you really want to be spending, a third of your time doing accounting or a third of your time, or do you want to try to outsource that, or is there some other way that you can have somebody else take care of it so that you can grow as a person in the firm to really like what you're doing, like
Yeah.
more of the time. Do you really want to be doing? I mean, I can remember asking somebody, they were working at a small firm and one of the owners, and then they were talking about doing, having to go through the timesheets, do this. And I'm like, do you really like doing that? And I said, because
Yeah.
that is not one of the things that I like to do. And he goes, well, but I have to do it. And I'm like, yeah, but I mean, is that really like where you want your focus to be? And I said, because I would not want to be the person that has to hound everybody for their timesheets and go through and try to like work.
Mhm.
Isn't there somebody else that can do that job better than you so that you can focus on things that you want to really do?
Yeah, there's a if you want a little bit of tough love, right? There's this harsh reality that says that if you can't leave your business for a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, and it run by itself, run on its own, then you don't actually have a business. You have a job. And it's when on context and clarity, which you referenced a second ago, there's the context and clarity live version, right? Where for a long time it was Catherine and I. Catherine was
Yeah.
my co-host, and then Katie was
Yeah.
my
Catherine
co-host.
McPhail. Yeah.
Catherine, yep, and Catherine McPhail and Katie Kangas,
Hmm.
both architects, one in the Boston area, one up in Minnesota, and Mike McAllowitz, who is
Yeah.
one of my favorite
Yeah.
business book authors. I think Mike has this superpower where he's able to take some business idea and boil it down to its very essence and then write a book about it. And so if you pick up his book, he's got like Profit First and Fix This Next, and
Mhm.
he must be up to 8 or 9 books or so by now. But Mike he might have been the most often guest. Three or four times he was on Context and Clarity Live. And I remember in Fix This Next, him telling the story. There's part of his origin story in there, and part of it was him not being able to, like, his business not being able to run unless he was there all the time. And then he realizes, right, well, that's not a business, that's a job. And so part of Fix This Next, once you get into it, you have the business hierarchy of needs, et cetera. He talks about having the goal of being to leave 4 weeks at a time. And most sole proprietors, sole practitioners go, not a chance. How in the world would I do that? Fair enough, right? It's a different business entity at that point. But I think, right, to your point, what do you love to do? What feeds you? What fuels you? What drains you?
Mhm.
Right? If you're an architect, and this is my personality and my opinion, and it may not match anybody else because I may be some weirdo, but But if you're an architect, it seems like you might like to get out and explore. It seems like you might like to get out in nature, in architecture, in cities, wherever it is, so that you can be inspired.
Yeah.
And that's part of your growth, right? Part of growth is paying attention, or part of what's necessary to grow is paying attention to what feeds us and what drains us, and saying, what can I let go of that drains me? What can I do more of that feeds me?
Mhm.
Right. And so then if we bring that to a business, like, okay, how do we, whether it's just us or there are, or we have people, right? How do I do this so that my people, so that myself can can have those goals, can do those things where I'm letting go of things as much as possible. I'm letting go of things that drain me. And are there things that you're always going to have to do that drain you? I'm with you. I don't want to fill out a timesheet, but are there things that I'm always going to
Or
be
look
doing that
over at
drain me?
other people's timesheets.
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
not. There are always going to be those things, but how can I reduce that? And then how can I focus on the things that feed me, that energize me, that inspire me? Right? That helps me to grow. That's on a
Mhm.
personal level, but it reflects on the business side, right? And when we get to depending on your relationship situations, right? If you're a married person and you go to work every day and it's completely draining every day, and then you come home to your family, whatever that looks like, what does that do? It's not helping any relationships grow, probably, right? But if we can come home, if we leave that, we can be inspired and we can do all of these things and we come home in a different mindset, right? That may give us the ability to be in a space where we can grow in a relationship, right? It becomes this holistic thing where if we're being fed, we're being fed and we're able to feed others. You've heard me say this a million times, right? When you get on an
Yeah.
airplane,
Yes. Put your
they make
oxygen
the
mask
announcement.
on
Yeah.
first.
Exactly. You have to put your oxygen mask on because if you are incapacitated, you're no good to anyone. So, what are
Mm.
we doing as business leaders, as community leaders, as family leaders, as, pick it, anything you want? What are we doing to feed ourselves so that we can show up in a way that not only where we're growing, but we're helping others, our clients, our customers, our people, our organization, the people we're in relationships with. It's all tied together.
So what do you kind of think, because it's the beginning of the year, and what do you have? I know that Jonathan Siegel says that he has like his 1 year, 5 year, 10 year plan, or like what can like we kind of put together as as like firm leaders, firm owners, even people that like work for people, and maybe they want to find a way out. Maybe they want to see, how do I move up in the firm? What are kind of those?
The I think the thing that everybody ought to strive for is how can I at the beginning of the day and how can I at the end of the day find some amount. It's 5 minutes, it's 15 minutes, it's an hour, it's whatever it is. How can I find stillness at the beginning of the day and how can I find stillness at the end of the day? Um, so that I can reflect on what's happening, what's going to happen, what has happened. I say this a lot on Java with Jeff. I think the real superpower of human beings is our ability to reflect.
Hmm.
Right? We can pause, we can be quiet, we can look back, we can see how far we've come, we can see the obstacles that we've encountered, we can see what led to those obstacles, we can see how we overcame those obstacles, and then we can turn and look forward and say, okay, is there anything that I now know that led up to that obstacle? Is there any of that I see in front of me? If there is, now that I have overcome those obstacles, what am I going to do differently as I go forward? Right. So it's this process of quieting ourselves and reflecting and learning and then applying. right? If we're
Mm,
not doing that, and it's hard. It's hard to do that. It's hard to find the time sometimes. It's definitely priorities. And it's hard to find that kind of presence and develop that kind of intention.
hmm
But when we
Yeah.
think about the times where we have been the best in our work, in our relationships for us, for ourselves, it was I will put money on. I will put everything that I'm getting paid to be on this podcast on the fact that in those times where you were the best,
hmm
you had presence and you were acting with intention, right? And that is hard. I was thinking about that the last couple of days. My youngest went back to school today. I've got two kids in college.
Yeah.
The youngest went back today, and I've been thinking the past several days, hey, we're coming. This is the last, as we're recording this, this is the end of the first business week of 2026. We're coming out of the holidays, and
hmm
it is so hard. Like between Thanksgiving and one of my friends who I team taught with an undergrad section last semester, he says no business happens between Thanksgiving and MLK Day.
Oh,
He's not
yeah.
wrong necessarily about that, right? It is so
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to show up and be present and act with intention because we have so little control over anything, right? And so now maybe, right? Now maybe there's
Yeah.
hope as we turn the corner here that we can get back and we can find those times and we can be present and we can be intentional about what we do. And one of the things I talk about on Java with Jeff every day, and also on my Substack every day, is this idea that if we take every day and we say, what is my intention for today? How can I act? How can I be intentional today? And just focus on baby steps.
hmm
Right? And remember, what is a baby step? This little human somehow pulled itself up, and it's wobbly and it's fumbly and it's jiggly and everything else, and it's starting to take these steps, and they're not sure. They're all over the place. They're not straight. They're falling off to one side or the other. I still think that half of the baby steps are really the baby starts to fall, and then somehow they, losing their balance, they put a foot out forward, and that became a step. And really, it was just a saving, right?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
son never really walked. He just ran. And he, in the very beginning, he got up somehow, and took a couple steps, and he ran face first into a wall, right? Smack right into the wall and falls down. That's what baby steps are, and that's okay, right? Those babies have no idea, but they know that they've gotten a taste of freedom, and they've gotten a taste of what it's like to grow, and they've gotten a taste of what it's like to be able to move in a different way, experience things in a different way. And what if we did that, right? Hey, what are the little things that I'm going to do today? I'm not going to try to accomplish some sort of heroic thing today because it's not likely I'm going to be able to do that tomorrow, right? I need to
hmm
be able to sustain these things. If I can take baby steps, small steps every single day, that's going to add up to a lot, right? If I can do something heroic today, fantastic. Will I
Yeah. And,
ever be
I
able to
think,
repeat that again?
yeah. And then of course, everybody is always right. They're like, okay, when is the kid gonna walk? When's the kid gonna walk? All of this pressure on this, like when, that person is like, that kid walked faster than this kid. This way,
Yeah.
da, 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 right? There's like all of these things, and all these opinions about like, oh, well, if you do this, then they'll walk faster. If you get a trainer thing, then they'll walk faster. When really it's about like when the kid is ready, right? When the kid is
Mhm.
ready, most of the time, unless there's like some, disability or something, like and then even then they're gonna maybe need a little bit more help than somebody else, or um you just kind of have to, it's like it's an individual thing.
Human beings, especially when they're young, before they learn not to be, human beings are all about adaptation, all about growth, all about overcoming. And at some point, we can lose that, right? At some point, we can, we can listen to a business consultant or a podcast, or we can, whatever, right? And we start overthinking, and all the other things that we're also really good at. And that's why I think, what if we just went back and simplified it, and went back to that really, really core basic experience, and said, you know what, I I've been doing a lot of basketball games this week. I've got, I
Mhm.
think, four more tomorrow, and I'm catching a cold,
Did you play
and
basketball? Did you play
I
basketball?
I did play I played
Oh, okay.
basketball and baseball. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so now I'm announcing a lot of sports now, but
Huh.
this is basketball season, and I've got this cold, and I took some cold medicine last night and realized at some point this doesn't work well for me. There's something about an ingredient in there that is not good for me. And so, I woke up this morning, and you look in the mirror and your eyes look terrible, and all of this, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is horrific, and that's okay.
Did you take
What?
NyQuil? Did you
No, I
take
didn't.
NyQuil?
No, I
No,
took I
no.
took some Sudafed. Sudafed's not a sponsor, right? I took some
No,
Sudafed
no, no, no,
nighttime
no,
thing.
no, 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 no. We can
And
just say cold medicine or whatever. But I
yeah,
like now. I don't think that. I think it's a uh, placebo. I think it's just like, oh,
well,
really it's gonna take you 5 to 7 days to, like, I mean, maybe it'll dry you out, but then, like, then you like suffer from that too. And
well,
or my kid one, unless you want to, unless you can't get to sleep or whatever because you're coughing too much or something. And
yeah,
then one time it's just like I gave my kid like a heavy duty NyQuil. I mean, he
mm,
was an adult, but because I just couldn't stand listening to him cough anymore.
yeah.
It's just I'm just here, just take this. And then the next morning he was like, "Oh my God, I was having all these weird dreams." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot that NyQuil does that. Maybe I should be taking something." But
Well,
yeah,
if we really want to go off the rails here, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
forget your NyQuil, just, a couple shots of good whiskey, and you'll be fine.
yeah,
But yeah, but that's the thing. That's part of the human experience, right? And as
Mhm.
and as adults, it's Friday morning. You get up, and you got stuff to do, right? You have to adult today. You have to be a business person today. You have to be in a relationship today. Whatever your things are,
Mhm.
and it is okay, right? If all you have today is a baby step,
Mhm.
right? You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to do some big heroic thing today. You just need to find a way to move forward a little bit,
Yeah,
right? And if we
yeah.
if we keep doing that every day, right, that adds up to something. And I was saying this a lot at the end of 2025. I was doing a lot of strategy sessions, which I love doing strategy sessions
Uh-huh.
with business leaders, but you know, a lot of you get to that time right after Thanksgiving, right? And you go, if if business development is your issue, right? If we
Mhm.
sit down and we start hashing this out and go, hey, my pipeline is dry, or whatever it is, okay, business development.
Mhm.
If you make one phone call a day from Thanksgiving to New Year's, you're going to move the needle more than you have all week, because or all year, because you haven't been doing that all year, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
if you're doing inbound marketing, and you do one really good thought leadership post or whatever, if you do one of
Mm-hmm.
those every day from Thanksgiving to New Year's, you're going to move the needle because you haven't been doing that all week, right? But it's just the one thing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can do one thing day after day after day over and over and over, and it makes this huge impact. And go back to the stories of the heads of innovation and saying, hey, we have so little adoption, right? 4%, 7%, whatever their percentages are. Okay, what if you get that up to 5, or what if you get up to 10? And what if you have this training, right? It's one of
Yeah.
the big reasons people aren't
Yeah,
adopting,
exactly. Yeah.
policies and all the things that we work on. What if we just focus on moving that needle up a little bit every day, every week, every quarter, whatever it is? Then we've got something, right? Then we have growth. We have the ability to grow, and
Mhm.
um, it's not. Maybe somebody in your audience has seen me do commodity as this commodity does, a talk that I've done a lot um, across the country for
Mhm.
like AIA and ACEC and SMPS and others, the alphabet soup of organizations. And I have this series of slides in commodity as this commodity does about growth. And it's this idea. The way that I used to tell the story was when my son was just like 14 or something. I think he was younger than that, 12 maybe. He started cutting the grass for people. He started building his business. He actually built this up to a pretty decent business and income before he sort of gave it to one of his friends when he was graduating from high school. But I used to say, like, I'll give you a choice. I'll write you a check for $1 million, or I'll give you a penny today and I'll double that penny every day. So one, and then two, and then four, and then eight, whatever the math is. I'm running out of fingers, so I have to stop there. But I'll give you a penny doubled every day for the entire month. And he's like 12 years old or whatever. He's like, oh, a check for $1 million. Yeah, never told him he couldn't actually cash it. But he sees that, and he's going for the instant gratification, right? $1 million. I want the $1 million. But so that's a heroic act, right? Hey, there's $1 million. I'll give you $1 million for your business. But that penny doubled every day. I forget the math now, but that penny doubled every day for 30 days. It's like $1.6 million
Mhm.
by the time you get to the end of the 30 days. So if it's a 31-day month, it's over $3 million, right? And we forget about that compounding. We forget about that exponential math,
Yeah. Yeah.
that baby step and that baby step and that baby step and that baby step can turn into a lot more. And when we're able to grow in that way and sustain growth in that way, then we're having an impact.
Yeah. Our stepdad used to tell us to like, oh, if you just save 10%. And when we were younger, we're like, whatever. And now my brother and I were just laughing like a week ago. We're like, if we had just saved 10% of
Yeah.
everything that we had, it's like,
Yeah. But then the car payment came.
I've never had a car payment. I've never had a new, or like, I never got a used car. Like, I've never gotten a car loan.
Yeah, never financed a car. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never financed a car, which is why I drive, crappy cars, but it's because I just never can. It's yeah, we did. Well, there's a Scirocco story of the whole thing about one time, and another thing that my stepdad would tell us is that a car is an expendable item. It's not an
Mm.
investment. Yeah. I mean, that's what he would say. Unless you're Jonathan Siegel, right? Then it becomes another thing. But I mean, still he dumps a lot into that before he gets something of that. But but I mean, that was like one time. I think we were maybe 16 and 18. My brother and I went into, and I've only gone into a car lot like twice, and then actually got to the loan
Hmm.
officer or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
you know. But my brother and I sat down, and my mom, she was there, but she totally didn't say anything to us. And they like put everything down. And then when my brother and I looked at the end of like what we would have paid for this
Yeah.
VW Scirocco, you know,
Yep.
it's like 1984 or whatever, this VW Scirocco, we realized that, it's like it was 10,000 or whatever at the beginning, but we would end up paying like 25,000
Hmm. Yeah.
or 27,000 or something. And we were just like, what? And then by that time, the car's going to be worth like, $500 or something. And
Maybe.
so we just walked away, right? We just
Hmm.
walked away from it. And my mom like told us later that was like one of the times that she was like the most proud
Yeah.
of us, that we just like looked at that, we were like, no, forget it, and like walked out, and also it didn't make any sense because I was going away to college. What was I going to do with this? It was a stick shift. I couldn't drive stick. I mean, it's, there were like a bunch of different reasons, but yeah, but I mean, she just looked at it as that. But I mean, those are the things you have to, right? You gotta like look
Hmm.
ahead and kind of like so is there anything else? Commodity is as commodity does. Maybe your book should just be all of the quotes, and then every single quote should be a chapter, right?
Well, at the beginning, you mentioned Christian Nielsen Palacios as a
Uh-huh.
sponsor for this. Christian actually, for Java with Jeff, he creates snippets every day. So he takes quotes and things that I say and makes posts out of them every day. And he's actually putting those together into a book. He asked me. He says, is it okay with you if I do that?" And I said, "Yes, you should do that because I'm not going to do that."
Are you gonna get credit for it though? You're gonna get
Oh yeah,
credit
he'll
for it,
he'll
right? Yeah.
he'll 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 credit me, sure. Yeah.
He better be giving you some of the commodity.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, that'll I mean it's interesting how careers evolve, right? Going all the way back to my first job out of college where I worked on the Museum of Contemporary Art, right? There are people
Mhm.
that it's a terrible economy back then. I mean, you remember the time and people back then they would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you're really good at those graphics. Why don't you go help the marketing department? And you're really good at writing. Go help the business development team. They've got a deadline on Friday." And that opened the door for me. That showed me, hey, there's this thing called the business of architecture that we didn't learn that in
Uh-huh.
school.
Yeah.
And I look at it now, and I look at a couple of stints in venture capital and a couple of stints starting firms, and especially architect-led design build and mastermind groups with innovation leaders and startup incubators and all these things. And I look at really what's been the thrust of my career over the last, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, something like that. It's been growth.
Mhm.
And it in a way, it seems like, well, yeah, I mean, isn't that what architecture is, right? We build things and cities grow or whatever.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but and this is, this focus on growth and culture of growth is what I call it now. It's bigger than that, right? It's
Mhm.
us as people, it's us as humans, and then how we take that to the profession or relationships or whatever, and how we take the profession to the communities, and how we take communities to the world, and so the Java with Jeff, doing Java with Jeff, or doing context and clarity for 3 years, and a lot of people have asked, how do you do that every single day? It's like, I don't know. I show up and I do it, but it's also it's where I figure things out. right? And
Yeah.
my Substack that I have now that I'm toying with, I call it my sandbox because it's meant to be a place where I can work on ideas, where I can figure things out, and also expand the conversation, right? You
Hmm.
know, the Java with Jeff is for a private community, if you will, for architects, and none of these topics are specific to architects, right? They're for humans, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
what the
Yeah.
Substack is for. It's to, and you know, the majority of the people that are showing up so far for my live streams on Substack are architects, um, and I hope to grow that
And that's it.
beyond.
It's at 7 though, right? It's at 7. It's at
So
7 my time, but 10 East Coast time, or
so Java with Jeff is at 8:30 Eastern, which is 6:30. Uh, no, which is 5:30 Pacific. Yeah,
yeah.
3 hours.
Yeah.
And then I turn around. Right now, I'm doing the live stream on Substack at 9:30 Eastern, which would be six
Yes, which is
thirty.
6:30. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And
Yeah.
and and
Which
the
I get the video afterwards. I like think, and I think only one time did I ever actually get
yeah,
on where you where it was actually live.
yeah, yeah, which is fine, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
and the promise to subscribers is that they get the live stream and they can walk with me. They can do the live stream. I
Yeah.
walk over to the coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I walk and talk basically. And
Yeah.
and and so the intent is to grow that into a larger conversation. Hey,
Hmm.
Michelle's joining from California, and Nicole from Arizona, and whoever,
Yeah.
and turn that into a conversation very much like Java with Chef is, or Context and Clarity used to be, and really sort of hash out these topics.
Uh-huh.
The honest truth about how, well, where do the ideas, where are the topics from Java with Jeff come from? Half the time they come from conversations I've been having. Maybe it's work with clients, which of course I anonymize. I don't share any
Yeah. Yeah.
proprietary info, but it's, hey, we're
Yeah.
having this conversation about this. Let's explore that topic for a minute, because
Hmm.
if it's true in this business, then it's probably showing up somewhere else. Or this week there's been a lot of conversation. I'm surrounded a lot of times by young people. It's either undergrads or graduates, or my kids or my girlfriend's kids, or athletes that are. My son used to play college baseball, but he's in graduate school now, so that's.
Yeah.
I'm not so immersed in that anymore, but I'm still around sports because I'm announcing, you know, baseball and basketball and volleyball and all these things, just surrounded by these people and by these young people. And it's really interesting to delve into these topics about how do we grow in a healthy way,
Hmm.
and how, um, a lot of the early days of Java with Jeff, it was fixed mindset versus growth mindset.
Yeah.
Uh, Carol Dweck and her team at Stanford coined those terms. I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe now. I forget the dates, but um, as a society, we need this, right? The fixed mindset people, on some level, say, because this is the way we've always done it, and
Yeah. And
that
I
is
mean,
the most dangerous term we have.
yeah. Yeah. And I think that I mean, like people say, like, oh, when did you start your podcast? And I'm like, oh, I started it in like 2018. And they're like, 2018. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, how did you do? Like, did you do this? Did you do that? I'm like, no, I just decided that I said I just recorded it on a voice
Hmm.
memo. I just did it. Right. I just did it. I
Yeah.
didn't have to like, I didn't get this big thing of like, oh, what are the performance going to be? And then I like signed up for one of these groups online that was kind of asking like, oh, well, what was your strategy? Like, I'm getting this many downloads, da 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 da, da. And it's like, what? And I'm like, I mean, or people are like, well, why did you do the podcast? What was the thing? I'm like, I just wanted to interview architects and kind of like, other architects and ask them, what see what their life was like, and then people would kind of know more about architects. And I mean, I don't know how many people are architects that are listening or how many people aren't architects, but it's like I'm just getting it out there. And I said, and it's one of these things where I can do, and you probably think the same way. It's like you're not beholden to anyone else except for
Right.
yourself.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like you can do whatever you want, you can kind of say whatever you want, you can post as often as you want, right? It's
Mhm.
just, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, there
yeah.
there are a lot of people, and this happens in organizations a lot, right?
Hmm.
We've got committees, and all these different things, and it's like,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
and I've had clients like this over the years. Well, okay, we need to do this and this and this and this, it, but we need to do this and this first, and they get wrapped up into the policies and procedures and perfection and professionalism and all that, and this is
yeah,
this
yeah.
is not right. When I say this out loud, right? I saw a post the other day. I actually used this for Java with Jeff and then Substack as well, where this guy says, this creator says the Ark was built by amateurs and the Titanic was built by professionals. And he uses that. It's a great hook. I've got
Yeah,
questions,
yeah,
okay, but it's
yeah.
a great hook. And he uses that to talk about imperfect action,
Hmm.
right? And there's this aspect of the profession, the industry, et cetera, where, well, professionalism.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day. AIA National asked me in 2012 to write an article about using social media to find clients.
Uh-huh.
And as it turns out, I had no idea. I was a little bit irritated with the editing process and whatever, and so I didn't pay any
Yeah.
attention. But as it turns out, it was the most read article on AIA National's website for that year. It's like, whoa, okay. I had started speaking and writing about using social media to find clients for architects
Yeah.
2 years before that,
Yeah.
which in a lot of ways was on the bleeding edge of social media and architecture. And so I would be speaking at this conference, some AIA conference or whatever, and people at that time, some people would say, well, it's not ethical for architects to use social media. And it's going back to some of these old beliefs, right?
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
we can get really wrapped up in the profession. We can get really wrapped up in professionalism. And none of this is an argument to be not professional, to not be professional, right? This is an argument to not get caught up in the noun problem. I
yeah.
interviewed Jake Rudin and Aaron Pellegrino from Out of Architecture. Catherine and I did on Context and Clarity Live a long time ago now. And they talked about the noun problem. Well, why do you do that? Because that's what architects do. Why do you do that in that way? Because that's how architects do that. Or pick your title. That's how
Yeah.
fathers do it,
Yeah.
or that's how
Yeah. Yeah.
mothers do it, or
Yeah.
whatever. It's a
Yeah.
noun problem.
Yeah.
And so we get wrapped up in that, and we won't take that imperfect action. We won't take those steps that are necessary because we're overthinking it. We have to
Yeah.
figure it out. No, you don't. You just need to start, and
Yeah.
you just need
Yeah.
to move forward. And whether it's that, how do you grow? And I can share with you the Jeff's steps to growth. I'll share that in a minute. But the other day, I came across this post from a quote from Andy Warhol,
Mhm.
and we're recording this on January 9th. We're
Mhm.
9 days now into 2026, and it's been, from my memory, one of the most bizarre years in history. There's a lot
Exactly.
going on, right? People getting
Yeah.
murdered, wars
Yeah.
being started, all of these things, and there are a lot of people who are suffering. Their
Hmm.
brains are seeing the news, their brains are looking at posts and they're saying this isn't safe. And so their brain's starting to pull back and shut down. And so I ran across this quote from Andy Warhol. It says, "Dear artists, maybe dear architects, dear
Mhm.
artists, remember that the opposite of depression is not joy, it's expression. So create, 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 for it is the soul's medicine. We need to do, we need to take action, we need to create every
Exactly.
day.
Yeah.
Every day
Yeah.
we need to do that. Um, and that's, you were asking me before, and I said, if we could just find space at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day to be quiet, to be able to reflect. What are you going to do after you reflect? Right? Reflecting is the ability to quiet yourself, the ability to look
Hmm.
back, to learn, and then apply.
Hmm.
What are you applying that you have learned in the past? What are you going to create? That's how we grow, right? My steps to growth are, you have to be curious.
Huh.
What if I did more of this? What if I did less of this? What if this happened? What if I tried this? I have to get curious about something. And
Yeah.
then that curiosity has to grow to the point that I start to believe that if I do these things or don't do these things, whatever it is,
Mhm.
that it'll benefit me in some way. And that belief has to grow strong enough that I decide to do something, to create, that I decide to take action. And then that action, once I do it over and over, becomes part of my normal motion. If I sustain that motion, it turns into momentum, and momentum drives change, and change leads to growth. That's how it works. It has to start with curiosity, and it'll go all the way through change, and then into growth. And
Mhm.
that action is in the middle of that, right? That's where it really starts. What actions are you taking? What are you creating? I love that. I love that quote from Andy
Yeah.
Warhol.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
create a post, create a podcast, sit down and sketch. I say this all the time on Java with Jeff, and Drew over here next to my desk. I've got a roll of trace paper, right? Or trash paper, or onion skin, or bum water, whatever
Yeah.
you call it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you roll that out and you start working on a project, you have no expectation. This is where that professionalism and that perfectionism should fall apart for you, right? You roll that
Hmm.
out and you start sketching. You have no expectation that when that pen or that pencil starts making lines on that trash paper, that it's going to be perfect, that it's going to be final, right? I know
Hmm.
that because you sketch it out and you tear it off and you roll it out over it and you sketch over it and you tear it
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
and you roll it
Exactly.
out,
Yeah.
and you keep
Yeah.
going and you
Yeah.
keep going and you keep creating and you keep creating and you keep
Mm.
iterating, and it's baby steps
Yeah.
until finally you get to the point to say, hey, this is something, right? And then you start collaborating with the
Yeah.
client, with the consultants, whoever they are, and then you keep going, right? It's
Hmm.
these baby steps,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's really it. And we have to, even in that process, right? We start thinking in terms of growth
Hmm.
of our people, ourselves, maybe at that point, of our firm, and of our client. And that even that process plays into this idea of the culture of growth. It plays out. It's demonstrated in that. So
Hmm.
that's what I'm working on. And I love working with firms and helping them develop those types of cultures within their organizations, because it benefits their clients. It becomes a place where people want to work. Back to what
Hmm.
you were saying before. Like you and I have both worked at places where it's been like, okay, I got to go to work today because I need to get paid on Friday, and that's why I'm going. If we're honest about it, right? But what if we develop places where people actually wanted to be?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's what cultures of growth. Uh, that's what they can do, right? We as
Yeah.
humans, most of us naturally want to be in environments where we can grow.
Mm.
That benefits our people. It benefits our organizations. It benefits our clients or our
Yeah.
customers, whatever you call them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jeff, how can people get a hold of you?
Well,
I'll be putting it in the show notes also, and then when I do the YouTube, I'll put all of the when I post the YouTube like 2 weeks from now. Yeah, one
sure,
week from now
sure.
I'll post this, and then 2 weeks from now the YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. It's easy to find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I love connecting on LinkedIn, but as I said earlier, I'm toying with Substack. I would love it if you'd go to Jeff Echols, so JEFFECHOLS .substack.com. And if you want to go straight to what this is all about, you can go to jeffeccles.substack.com/about. And it's called my sandbox. I'd love it if people would come play with me in my sandbox.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. I'm gonna stop the tape. And then thank you also to Opus 2 LLC, correct? Who's writing a book for Jeff?
Yeah, Christian Nielsen Palacios, fantastic, self-proclaimed grouchy architect.
Architect.
Yep.
Thanks again, Jeff.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Great
Oh,
to talk to you,
I
as
have to
always.
put my there.